Well, we have two veterans who came earlier today, and Janice has already signed up, but just wanted to come hang out and see who else was coming. So we'll have a nice informal conversation, I think. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So, and what's on your mind, Michelle?
Um, well, when I saw that it was back, I think I've been to a couple of them, and I absolutely loved it.
Hmm.
And um, the experience stuck with me, I think, forever, really. I'm
Hmm.
just thinking of the topics. I think it was on grief and shadows
Yeah.
and phenomenal. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I signed up for a few after that as well. I recall there were a lot of changes going on, and that was okay because I think I needed it to digest too.
Yeah.
So that was actually a gift in its own right, just to have a break because
Yeah.
it
It,
takes
it
you on
didn't feel like a
the journey.
gift at the time, but for me, but
I know, I know.
yeah,
So
but anyways, it's all good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was actually, believe it or not, only looking at it last night, my
Hmm.
notes, everything like that, and um, so I was actually curious about this year's as well. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know much, and so I just come to
Yeah.
be curious to check it out again.
Okay. And Sharon and Tracy, as returnees from earlier today, what is are you bringing?
Uh, yeah, I just anytime I hear retreat, I'm interested. There's been so much that's offline or that's online. I'm interested in anything that's uh has a little more depth and I mean, retreat, of course, to me implies something in person. This I think
Yeah.
is going to be virtual, but that time frame allows for
Hmm.
deeper relationships. So yeah, just curious to hear more about.
Yeah.
I
So,
I
yes,
have
Tracy.
I tend to have a word for each year that just at some point, either at the beginning of the year or the end of the year, just emerges as significant. And in the last couple of weeks, the word decentering emerged.
Hmm.
And this feels like an important part of exploring or just being curious about what that means. And so I'm hoping to just see what emerges with that, but I know that word is part of it.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I'm just trying to think. Well, oh wait. Sharon's got something on the stove. Um, um, just trying to think what would be helpful. Um,
Say something.
what's that?
I love that word, Tracy.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. It's even though it's decentering, it turns into nourishing.
Hmm.
It, yeah, I can feel it. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah. The, and if I just go back to my body experience of David's retreat, this is a couple of years ago, I can still feel it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, so let me just share a couple of things. So Sharon's already heard this, so she'll when she comes back, it'll be fine. But so part of what I wanted just to sort of talk about the origin of the name of the retreat. So we did actually a virtual retreat during the pandemic, sort of building around the narrative release, and but I wanted to sort of make a distinction that it feels like this is not asking you to become a guiding light, like a some kind of a lighthouse that stands in one place on some forlorn rocky coast and just beeps at light. It's actually much more akin to being a community of fireflies. that lights up when it's needed and calms down when it's not. And so really the whole purpose for doing this as a group, even though it is online, is that each of you will be kind of on your own personal journey, but doing this with other people. So you might have periods where you need a guiding light for yourself, like you're down in the weeds of something you can't quite figure it out about yourself or about your life or about your practice. And I feel like we're going to have to be really mindful of our energy and time in the period ahead and use our light well and mindfully. Um, and that this sort of drive to keep consuming things as a professional, we asked the question this morning, what if I already had enough? And so there'll be some things that you will learn in the retreat, but I'm not going to teach much because you don't need more teaching. And going back to Tracy's word of decentering, so it's the beauty of the retreat. I had a very intense when we used to do live retreats, I used to have a very intense third day, doing threshold work for 8 to 12 hours in a row, but which I loved, and it's my most purest form of my work. But the first 2 days, I was doing very little other than holding space for people. Um, and so this will be like that in the sense that I'll maybe just put up a little slide so I can show you the picture that might help explain it easier. Here we go. Yeah. Oh, now Suri's getting excited because I left her out somehow. And I just got a new Apple Watch. It's already feeling lonely, so I'm going to put it over there. Hopefully they'll stay away. Yeah. Um, yeah. So there's the 5 maturities. And so we just kind of ran through a mindfulness practice this morning, which we'll do again in the actual retreat, but helping us to get a feel for what it's like to move up and down the maturities. So Janice, did you come to any of the 5 maturities talks that we gave a few months ago?
Yes,
Okay.
I did the series.
Okay, I couldn't remember, but we had a lot of people, so
Yeah.
but so I don't need to explain that. But um yeah, so this is just sort of the structure. So we're going to have a total of 12 live sessions over almost 6 months. Offer as usual to offer twice a day. They'll record it if you miss something. Yeah, we'll have 2 live sessions basically per section. One orientation, well, you see in a minute, but and we'll have resources and assignments for you. So between the first and third week, you'll have a sort of a field assignment for yourself. And then in the fourth week, you'll come together with a very small pod to kind of compare notes and see kind of where you landed around that maturity. There's a forum space and circle like we have for all of our programs now, where you can post questions and share ideas or reflections. It's also people have been using it to connect with people that have similar interests. So maybe you have a little sort of side group talking about, maybe the 5 maturities and retirement or whatever is important to you. And then we experimented with the Lighten Your Load program of having a handbook that has all of the slides in it and spaces for you to write and reflect on the slides. That way, everything's in one place, and you're not, and you can use it or not. We just found a lot of people really appreciated that to have everything that's in one place. So this is sort of the way it's organized. So we'll have for each of the 5 maturities, we'll have an initiation session, which sort of drops us into that maturity, gives you some sort of avenues and activities to um, identify what it is that you'd like to work on in that maturity. So in the orientation, we're going to invite you to kind of have a mission for the 6 months, at least as a starting, as a narrative coaching, that may easily change over time, but sort of a purpose for yourself, a North Star or a Southern Cross for Michelle, to kind of guide you. And then each time we get to a maturity, the initiation will kind of, like I said, drop us into that space, kind of set you up for both practices in the group, but also your own assignments, and then we'll come back and sort of look at what did you discover, what's that saying to you about this maturity, and so that each maturity will sort of build on each other. And then the last one, the contextual maturity, kind of brings them all together. And then we'll have sort of a mini threshold experience for people in small groups, and for our 12th session, our last session, to kind of at that point kind of move into what does all this mean in terms of what you'd like to do differently in your life or your practice. And that would have been building along the way, but when I just have an opportunity for people to sort of declare that at the end, to sort of celebrate the end of the retreat. Yeah, and then the piece that Michelle was pointing out was I had this really spark of inspiration a few mornings ago and realized that the five elements that were in what we called gates, that were sort of in the narrative release program, each one mapped really well to a maturity. And so this will give us an occasion to kind of give you some resources to go deeper on each maturity. In time, those will also kind of grow as sort of separate spaces themselves, for which people can, in our community, can do master classes, or we can do other kinds of events. So kind of look like this. And so we're going to, like I said, just give you some additional resources. So if that's a maturity that feels pretty important to you on your journey, each of these will provide some deeper insights into what that might be about. And so we can, for example, not so much teach attachment work, but just sort of introduce you to the basic concepts if it's new for you, as a frame for you to look at where am I not mature in my relationships with my clients, or it could be a relationship in your family, it doesn't matter. And you might say, I just feel like I still have a need to be appreciated and helpful. So what does that mean? Well, it probably means a fairly somewhat of an anxious attachment style. So we're going to give you some tools in there to sort of deepen your spiritual maturity and deepen your capacity to be clearer about actually what's happening in the relationships when you're, say, working. So we'll have some extra things here to kind of, again, just to kind of provide some extra scaffolding for any of you that choose to really invest time and energy and addressing that particular maturity. And then there's just a whole bunch of other things happening around the five maturities with some of the coaching associations, with Institute of Coaching. And I've even been encouraged by one person to turn it into an instrument. And so we're working on some possibilities. So there's a lot of really positive things. And what I'm hearing consistently across all the presentations and podcasts I've done over the last year or so is a really hunger for people. This is even before the election, to feel grounded in a time that's very feels fragmenting and chaotic and uncertain. And so it's sort of like the old adage about the willow tree, that the willow tree survives much better than the oak in big windstorms, because the willow trees are deeply connected, often underground, to each other. So they're anchored in the ground, but the tops go all over the place. So they just bend with the wind. And then when the wind is done, they're all fine. Oaks sometimes have much shallower roots and are very heavy and are very brittle. And so they often don't do well in windstorms. So we just sort of, as an analogy, I see a time when we need to be like willow trees or aspen trees, deeply connected ourselves, but also to others, and being willing to flex with what's coming. Yeah, and yeah, so I'm just going to stop there for a minute. Welcome back, Sharon. And just see if there's some other slides I have in here, but I wanted to see what would be useful for you at this point.
I'm curious, So I did a program with you last year, and
Mhm.
this sounds different.
Mhm.
And also, of course, same topic, the five
Yeah.
maturities and deepening it. And um I just know that I'm in a different place than I was when I did it before. So I feel like
Mhm.
this will be a deepening of it, but how might I get the most out of the course
Yeah.
or of the retreat beyond participating?
Yeah.
Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, and I think we're doing all kinds of things to create some membership opportunities around the two programs and the program communities. But for me personally, this is where I'm going to be spending a lot of my time. So there's a whole, I mean, it may be hard to imagine, but there's actually a whole bunch of things that I've developed that I don't teach because there wasn't really a place for it yet. And we have faculty developing, well, certainly in narrative coaching, we have a very strong faculty. We're building a faculty for ID, and they can start to take over some of that basics. And those will continue sort of in the professional sphere, but I'm, I think one of the um, uh, pieces that's interesting. I think we're going to end up with a return. I don't know what you all read when you were in, like younger, but I think we're going to return to existentialism and some other things to ask bigger questions. And so I feel like when one of those questions is, um, what would enable the human species to wake up soon enough to realize what's happening, to do something? And or will we not? But so then becomes like, what is our role to play? Like, what is our, if we had a magic wand and somebody said, you have three wishes for the world, but not like fantasy wishes, like everybody's happy, but three things you could make happen. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
would you do? And so I think there's sort of two, it's um, what comes to mind, Janice, is that I think most of the powerful experiences people are going to have are at either end of the spectrum, and deep inner work on themselves and or deep courage to go try something different. Um, and to begin to imagine um, how we might work differently. So one of the ultimate aims for the entire business going forward is to develop new kinds of practitioners that we don't have yet, or that people are just doing instinctively or intuitively, but we'd like to create some structure and support around that. And then the second piece of that is we need new forms of working, not just new forms of being a practitioner. And so I think that what's going to come out of this is uh, we had a person a couple of weeks ago was asking about, like, what would the five maturities look like for doctors, uh,
Mm.
teachers, or and so I feel like oftentimes in programs you gotta get stuck in the middle. I've got to learn all these things and I've got to study all these things and I got to memorize things, and we're not going to do any of that. It's really going to be I get to bring in more of my, and I get to bring in more of my inspiration of what practice might look like for us. And so that's, I think, what will be different. I think um, in the past, when we've done things related to this, it was much more about unlearning things and letting go of things and
Mm.
like, wow, this sounds kind of cool. I think I'd like some of this. And now it's, I think, more about that. That will be there for some people, especially if they're coming for the first time. Um, but it's going to be more about like really um, stepping into what is most important to you now. Um, like, so one of the examples, so all my life, I, even though I wasn't technically called this, the thing aside from being a scholar, the thing I most enjoyed and was most known for, like on these retreats, was having sort of a healing presence.
Mm.
And we did a lot of that. And I still have that, but I also thought, I'm not sure I could do that way now for a number of reasons. And then this unintentional return to my first degree in sociology. Um, and I feel like this sort of with a very small p, this prophetic energy coming. Like I didn't ask for that. Like, what is that? What? But that's what I just feel called. And all along, I've been talking about enlightened pragmatism. That's what's happening now without any real clear strategic plan or intention on my part. That's just what's emerging. And so I think that's going to show up in how the retreat unfolds. Much more on the personal enlightenment for you in whatever form that takes, and much more about the pragmatism of, well, so now what do we do?
Mhm.
Yeah,
It sounds juicy.
yeah. So we had this running joke a while back. It's sort of a combination of a dojo and a kindergarten because we want you to play, but it's also serious work. Yeah, and I feel like no one knows what's happening. No one really knows what to do. I don't have any magic answers myself. I have some ideas and I have some assumptions I'm making, but I just feel like if we connect to each other like those aspen trees do underground and help each other, that we'll find what we need.
Mm.
Um, yeah. And so by going back to Tracy's word again about decentering, so a lot of this work will all be available to when the retreat starts. So you're welcome to move in and out of any of the material you want, even if we're not doing it that week. If you need it, like I need my body's crying out, or my body feels tired, or I'm afraid. Like go and borrow some things from those two sessions. Take them when you need them, and then when you can take them again when we get to that part of the schedule. So I think it's for me, it's like I'm intending to, well, there'll be some orientation that first session for people that are new to all this. I'm gonna do my best to experiment with not teaching at all. I might talk about things, and I might share things, but there's nothing to be taught here. So
Thank you.
yeah.
David, some of my probably most impactful development work has been small groups working on something together with
Yeah.
that kind of meta frame
Mm-hmm.
of, we're trying to also integrate new understanding at the same.
Mm-hmm.
I heard you say maybe an oscillation between deep work on self and showing up in the world
Yeah.
differently.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything planned around project work, or is that
Yeah.
something we might just find for ourselves by happenstance in the group, or is that, are you thinking about anything along those lines in intent?
Yeah. So so one of slides that's will be in there is sort of a modified version of a developmental threshold zone. And so that's what we're basically doing. It's from ID. And so we're moving between the enlightenment of yourself, like what do I need to mature in myself so I can go out and do something that's closer to what I really want to be doing and doing it more masterfully. And that's sort of the right-hand side of the zone. So it would be unlikely that everybody would be able to just really hone in on something they want to do it in 6 months. But you'll have your chance to meet with your pod, which will be that small group. And so after the orientation and sort of during those first couple of sessions, I'm going to ask people sort of to declare what is it I'm hoping to do or be by the time I'm done. And again, it will change some, but as long as it's still heading the same direction, you have accountability partners in your small group and who can scaffold you while you're trying to move towards something. Um, so like the I was meeting with a colleague I've gotten to know who's very keen about this. She's bringing me into an IOC event to speak on the Five Maturities, and she's extraordinarily commercially oriented and savvy. She's been involved in some very well-known projects and that we all would know the authors of. And so she challenged me. She said, I'm going to help you. We're going to go create something from this that you won't do by yourself because you're too modest. But you have, she's really funny. And so I would say if I were in one of your pod groups, that would be my project, that I'm going to dare myself to go do that. And then I would be kind of moving through this and then noticing, like in the DTZ, what of that, like for me, there's grief in that, there's attachment issues in that for sure for me. And the huge shadow pieces. And so each of these modules, each of these sort of pairings, kind of just takes us through another swing of that. It's all like, pretty soon we're all the way out into the world with the project, right? But we're having to kind of do this. Um, and yeah, so you're not there to discuss the topic of the session.
Yeah.
And you're there to kind of advance whatever it is you chose to work on. And that's, I think, will be different. Yeah. And so if somebody's waffling and not creating a project, then the group can call them on that and say, what's keeping you from even naming a project? Yeah. And so, if we end up with the host and stuff, we'll probably have 45 or 46 people. And so if we had 46 cool projects, things happening, then that would be amazing. So at the end, when we all, we haven't booked it in yet, but we'll have a sort of impromptu graduation, if you will, for this once we get underway. So people can come share about the completion or their progress on their project.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So just in for ID reasons, I don't want these to be navel gazing conversations where you just like reflect on the meaning of life. You can do that some because that might be part of the equation for you, but I feel like we need a lot of pragmatism at the moment. Yeah. So did Janice have to take off?
Pragmatism is a word that has recurred like a dozen times this month. So
Okay, there you go.
interesting. Yeah.
Did Janice have to take off? Okay. She's already signed up, so that's good. And she got her question answered. So So how can I be helpful to all of you?
I feel like I got my burning question answered. So thank you.
Okay, excellent. Tracy or Michelle, what's on anything for you?
When you were mentioning the project, my body went, oh my gosh, I have to step into this and own a project and become mature. It's it's you know what I mean? It's like,
You better get started.
what will that be?
Yeah.
To give me
I'm very
this,
mature right here. As soon as I
yeah.
get into the world and interact, that's when the immaturity comes out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just then you look at your identity then, and then it's I have something stirring anyway. And that's okay. It's just when it came straight to me, I was like, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to have a look at this.
Hey, Larry.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
All right. Did you come to find out more about the retreat?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Excellent.
I'm
You
sorry,
know,
I
the one thing,
think I'm a little late. Uh,
That's okay. You're here now. It's all good.
okay,
All
good.
good. Are you on your phone?
Yeah, can I switch over? I want to get on my laptop. I just
Otherwise, I think we're gonna get dizzy trying to follow you.
oh, I'll come off of this and then I'll go back on through the
Okay,
laptop. Thanks.
sure.
All right.
Yeah, I was getting vertigo.
Mm.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
The word that dropped in for me was courage.
Hmm.
Because it feels like an extension of what I've done. Um,
Hmm.
and I remember when that took me to what it took me to, and I'm
Yeah.
so grateful. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's more. Yet I can hone in on a. I never started with a little mini project or an idea to then
Hmm.
try and scope and design that. I'm not saying design, I'm sitting there going to design,
Yeah.
meaning what is received as I'm going through
Yeah.
each of the maturities and those bonus things. Gosh, I lighted up. I felt I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yes, I'm going to go through that again.
Yeah.
That's going to be great. So I'm so I and with what I even had experienced last time, one thing that I really enjoyed was others who I actually didn't know witnessing the
Hmm.
discoveries that were coming through
Hmm.
of myself.
Yeah.
And then from that, being human, most can go through that.
Hmm.
So when you're becoming a practitioner as such, it's like you've been there before, though it's not the same experience. Do you know what I mean? I hope I'm not rattling on it. Just um, I was just eye beaming it as well, David, while I was sitting
Sure.
here looking at, what you were showing and just going through um, that the extended piece
Hmm.
just drew me straight in. It's not the
Okay.
same, it's different and focused on something that is from my heart.
Okay. Just trying to find one of the slides here for a second for what you were just saying. Um, yeah, so one of the other things, oh yeah, here it is. One of the other things that brought it up for me, Michelle, is that in the Five Maturities report, just brought forward all the evidence, which keeps telling us again and again that the variables that have the most impact on outcomes for our clients are the clients themselves. But
Mm,
we're not measured for that. We're not even taught about that most of the time. We're taught about how to be a good coach and do a good job. Um, and so part of the reason to bring in all those five other bodies of work is those things are all now running amok in
mm,
America for sure, and now in other parts of the world. Huge shadow, huge grief,
mm,
massive attachment issues, and people are going to be really disappointed when the people that elected don't attend to any of that and actually make it worse.
mm,
And they won't, they won't have the wherewithal much to recognize that's happening. So they'll be angry at somebody else that they can blame for
mm,
all this. And so part of it is not just doing this work for ourselves, but we're going to be bombarded, I think, with just shadows everywhere of
mhm,
unrecognized trauma, unrecognized uh, genocides, if you're First Nations or Aboriginal or Native American. I think that's all, and even the shame that drove a lot of people to vote certain ways in the US. And I know and so I think it's going to be in the air. It's going to be in the field in a huge way. And people are not going to, as we're seeing already, not responding very maturely to that.
Mm.
And so I think part of our role is not we can't do that for them, but we need to be mature enough to hold those spaces. And so, yeah, I don't know what that's going to look like, but that's just my sense that um, that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we start, and then as we say in narrative coaching, that we only can travel as far as we've gone ourselves with our clients. So same here. We're going to start ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to throw another word in there too, because it's going to be
Okay.
dance with it. Vulnerable. It's
Mm.
going to dance with courage, not really fight each other off, just
Yeah.
dance with it and just keep going through what um, is being offered from you, David, and um, be, sit, whatever that means as we move through each of the experiences.
Hmm.
I've said enough. Anyway, that's what my my little
Yeah.
things are. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Mm. Tracy, while we're waiting for Larry to find his laptop, is there anything else that you'd like for right now?
I don't have anything specific except that there's something present in understanding what is going to be of use in the world that's different from how I've shown up in the world up till now.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that is. And I think part of the decentering is, and it goes back to what you said in the first session with the slides. What if we had what if we had already had everything, or what if we already
Yeah.
had everything? And there is a part of me that feels that I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. You know, I've
Yeah.
made it this far in life through a lot of stuff, and I've been able to mostly find okay. And what might it look like to then all of the energy and time that I have focused inwardly on myself at each moment? For example, sitting when I was a young medical student with my notepad, making sure that I asked the right questions because I wanted to perform well as a student doctor. And I wanted to, it was all focused on how am I doing? Do I know enough? Am I doing enough? To really, truly being able to turn that gaze outward and
Mm.
listening to what's needed, and where can I fill in, again, not a reflection necessarily on me, but what is needed outside of me, and what do I have
Yeah.
to offer in those spaces, and just curiosity around how that might show up differently.
Hmm. Yeah. So Larry, we've been having a conversation about the retreats. I'm curious what brought you here and what you would like to know about the retreats, or what interests you about the retreats that we might spend some time on.
Well, narrative coaching
Hmm.
really intrigues me. Uh, I've followed, um, you know, narrative coaching. I followed you for a while,
Yeah.
you know, because I'm a life coach, and I really enjoy life. I enjoy all of it, but there's just something about, narrative coaching that just really, really intrigues me above other things that I've experienced.
Okay.
And I was I watched a demonstration that you did. I think it was with coaching.com.
Yeah, with Brian.
Yes, yes. And I was just really just amazed what came out of that time with him. Uh, it just really, um, and I've seen a lot of people do life coaching.
Yeah.
I've been at it for a little while, but just how it was. I like the idea, and I know the concept that you talked about, the curriculum, in the moment, or something of that sort.
Yep.
I just love that. I love that metaphor. That things can happen right then in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I like other things about it as well. The no goals, not having a goal that you really set. I know there's things that you really want to accomplish, but in the moment is where we're really working.
Yeah.
And just knowing some of the philosophical framework, not knowing it, but
Yeah.
knowing some bits and pieces about it, and then watching you work with that particular gentleman and just seeing how everything evolved.
Mm.
And he got what he was looking for, not thinking that he was going, that would be the way it would come out.
Yeah.
It just, it really got my attention. And so
Okay.
I wanted to hear about the retreat.
Okay. But we'll have two main things next year. One will be this retreat on the five maturities. And then we're starting a couple of different options to study narrative coaching or ID or other program. And so I think it's just up for you to decide which one. The retreat will focus more on yourself personally, whereas the narrative coaching community will focus more on learning more about the narrative coaching practice and skills. And both would be great choices. It's just a matter of where you kind of want to focus your energy. This one will look more at your own maturation as a human being and somewhat as a practitioner. It'll be much more experiential, much more conversational. It won't have a formal set of resources like narrative coaching does for the most part. So yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and we're building the new platform for the two programs, and they will launch in March. So probably in early January, we'll sort of announce those, and we'll have sessions like these to learn more about narrative coaching. Um, and we have sort of a small way to get started in narrative coaching, kind of a medium way of getting started in narrative coaching, and a really big way of starting in narrative coaching. So you can sort of pick what it is you'd be most interested in.
okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. And that starts in March.
In March. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
And we'll do a couple of special events in January and February because we have a lot of people that want waiting for the next narrative coaching cohort. So we'll do some couple of special events just to kind of help people stay engaged and then we'll start to open up the membership for the programs in around mid-March.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Sounds good.
Okay. Is there anything else for now?
For me?
Yeah, for any of you. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But for you too, Larry. Yeah.
Okay. Um, I'd have to really just kind of think it through. I like working on me. I like that idea. Is that like a segue into, would that be a better segue into coaching?
So the philosophy that's in the five maturities is at the foundation for both narrative coaching and ID. So it would help you uh like we noticed a lot in this year's cohorts that people did more work on themselves and so they weren't as mystified by what I was teaching as they have been sometimes in the past, like where they were fighting. Well, what do ICF think about that? And no one even said that once in the entire year. So I was so happy. So it would be a good foundation for you to come, then you could come back when you're done to start on narrative coaching. So we'll start new cohorts for narrative coaching a couple of times a year. So you could do the retreat now if you want to just work on yourself, and then come back in the latter half of the year and start with narrative coaching. And it'll be more self-paced with small groups, so you can do it at a rhythm that works for you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now the retreat, is that that's over? It's not like 1 day retreat. It's over.
No, it's built sort of like a program. It's over 6 months. In time, we might do them live, but not quite yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but yeah, so you'll have a small group that you work with, and then a couple of live sessions with half the group, and then some assignments for you to do yourself. And I was sharing before you got here, Larry, that the focus is really on developing yourself, but then also maybe picking a project when you start, that everything's moving towards um, you kind of completing something as a result of being in the retreat.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, I think they have the most current version. I see. I send that to them, the most current version, but I don't know if they got it. So,
Mm.
um, but I can put. Are you looking for the link to their paper?
Yeah, just I know I've read it. I just I know you've talked about a couple of versions. I just wondered if
Yeah.
that's
That's the retreat. Let me do this.
it. May be. Have you put it in the community? Maybe I should look there.
Yes, it's on the website.
In the circle.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's on the website, not in. It's probably in Circle somewhere, but it's on the website for sure.
Okay, on the Moment website. Okay.
Yeah. Where I know what it is. Let me see. Old programs. Yeah, my here it is. There we go. Just cutting and pasting it for you.
Mm.
There we go.
Thanks.
And I saw David on the internet under the resources. You know, with the under the Moment Institute.
Yep.
Yeah, there's an actual special spot there.
Yeah.
for-
Yep. Hmm.
Good.
Hmm. All right.
Thank you, David. That was
You're most welcome.
great. Appreciate
It's
it.
almost midnight. I'm about to turn into a
Yeah.
pumpkin. So I'd be
Oh,
happy to go to
Oh,
bed.
no.
well, orange is the new black, David, I heard. So
Is it really?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Okay. I don't
I
listen to
have
them
to
that
go
often.
too.
All right.
Yep.
Well, I'll get
All
some
right.
dinner and you get some sleep.
Will do. Be well, my friends, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
See you,
Thanks,
Tracy. See you,
Larry.
Larry.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
David.
you.